Power, we have Tata Power from who will be speaking here today on their experiences. But what I would like to stress is that in making their business a profitable business, and in turn providing electricity to people who never had electricity, it is very important that electricity sector regulation enables and empowers those companies. Therefore, it is a mixture of both regulatory systems and commercial opportunities which take us ahead. I'm delighted that Mr. Deshdeepak Verma, who used to be the chairman of the regulatory authority in India's largest state, Uttar Pradesh, is with here today. He had created a set of regulatory changes, a regulatory policy that enabled the solar mini grids to come in. And as a result, we now have a very large number of solar mini grid applications in the jurisdiction over which the regulatory policy is applicable. I look forward to hearing from him as well. We also look at, therefore, reducing the cost of electricity from solar mini grids. We look at enhancing the deployment of solar mini grids, enhancing the quality of customer service, providing electricity that enables income generating appliances to be used. Without electricity, they can't be used. A great example for this is power looms, which have been used for mechanization of textile, whereas nothing was available earlier. And this also helps in improving a business model by solar mini grid developers. Without further ado, let me hand over this session to my colleague Ramesh for taking it forward. We will start off with an overview, a keynote speech being provided by Mr. Deshdeepak Verma. Verma Sahab, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajay ji.
Sir, just a moment. Before you begin, Mr. Verma is online. We can hear all of him. If you want to cut out the noise and only hear that, you can use the headphones and put them on channel 1, and you can hear it directly. Verma Sahab, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. Thank you very much. I am glad the kinds of progresses and development that are taking place under your stewardship in International Solar Alliance. I'm also delighted to see the familiar faces once again, Rohit and other people on this forum. And I'm grateful to ISA for providing me this forum. Friends, during my 45 years of civil service, I have realized that to address any problem, especially in the governments, we have sometimes a centralized approach, and sometimes some people have a decentralized approach. The centralized approach is basically, to my mind, suits the bigger economies where there is a smaller area, concentration of population, there are much less income disparities. It suits them. While the decentralized approach generally suits the countries which have huge income disparities, which are in the nascent stage of their development, like the developing countries, the LDCs, the island developing countries, etc., what you call now South Global. So it suits them, and to my mind, it is the decentralized approach which actually suits these countries. Most of the policymakers, most of the people who implement the policies prefer the centralized approach for the simple reason that it is comfortable, it is easy, and also it gives them power. So, but to my mind, in countries like India and several other countries, which I call South Global, to have an access to electricity, to have an universal access to electricity, mini grids, microgrids are the approach which we need to adopt. It is a difficult proposition to convince the policymakers and the powers that be at the top. Many times, Rohit knows how difficult it has been in Uttar Pradesh, because we came out with these regulations in 2016 when Government of India, the draft guidelines had also not come. And when we did that, we did face lots of cynicism, lots of criticism, saying that that you have left it to the private players and several other things, and that this would not succeed. Anyway, the story has been much different thanks to people like Rohit and other people, other organizations, Smart India and Husk, Rockefeller Foundation, etc., who have been working in this field, and they could see the potential in the mini grids and they worked on it. But we must realize that in the countries like India, especially for the rural areas, we have to have the decentralized approach, and mini grid is a manifestation of that. When we are making the guidelines, I just want to take a few minutes on this. This was a totally uncharted territory. So we didn't know how it should proceed, how it will go. And if you see the regulation, we covered all the scenarios. We said there are two scenarios, for example, we said where entrepreneur wants subsidy. So there was subsidy provided for that. And in that, the tariff was regulated. And the second one, which actually raised many eyebrows, was that when we said that if the entrepreneur, the producer does not, the mini grid operator does not want to have any subsidy from the government, then we should not poke our nose unnecessarily. And I said, for them, there would be no regulation, because I feel that the market is the best regulator. If a consumer and the producer are agreeing to a certain tariff, so they must be understanding that even if the main grid is providing powers at a certain price, but because of their reliability, because of the quality of power, they want to depend on the mini grids, on the alternate sources of energy, and then why should it not be allowed? So in my opinion, for anything, for any sector which is coming up, the regulation should always be benevolent. It should be light-handed and not very stiff, so that it simply does not regulate, but it strangulates. That is what I used to tell my officers, that we should agree for this, because they were having lots of objection on why not have let them decide the tariff with people. And they said this was wrong. I said market forces would decide. There are many competitors will come, but if you want to do right in the beginning, then it will actually kill the sector. So you have to give that, and that is why we also gave comfort to the operators by saying that there are two exit options would also be there, because as all of you are aware, and that resistance has come down heavily now, but at some time the main grid people were basically very opposed to this. This happens in any system. When you introduce a new approach, a new system, then the other people oppose it. And that is what exactly was happening. And therefore, I did not know how the main grid will take up these mini grids. And that is why I said that, okay, let's give two options also for exiting. And that option, of course, those are very rudimental. They have to be further elaborated and gone into this. But to my mind, the solution in countries of South Global, the solution where there is a grid and where there is no grid, is a combination of a judicious mix of the main grid and mini grids and the microgrids. Because unless you do that, and for doing that, there is a need for integrating the two. And for that, both the sectors will have to come forward and they will have to agree. In India, in my opinion, this is not only useful for the consumer, it is also cost effective. So it is useful for the government. In India, in 2019, when I started, that time about 20 million households were unserviced in India also. Now in 2019, this percentage figure is, it is almost universally electrified. Every household level, it has been electrified. But come to think of the cost, if we had decided that inaccessible areas or the last mile connectivity would be given through the mini grids and the main grid, and both would have been integrated, then it would have been, I think, a much better proposition. And also the reliability and the quality of the service would have also improved. So, so since I have very little time, so I would like to say that the future of the mini grid is definitely very bright because of especially the focus which has gone on the non-conventional energy and RE sector, and the inherent strength of this mini grids technology. What we need to do, of course, is there are a few things which I wanted to say about the mini grids, because you know that main power grids we have at heavy cost, we have gone to very inaccessible areas. In fact, even areas which are separated from a river body or something, even there we have gone, and how much cost we have done. And we have also, we must realize that when we go to such far distances, the T&D losses for which all the DISCOMs have been struggling for a long time, you are also adding to that TNC losses. So this is easily manageable, much less TNC losses, and it is like a sync between the demand side and the supply side. I don't know if you must be, all of you are an expert, so you must be aware that many DISCOMs bring out with the time of day tariff, TOD tariffs, because at some point of time, the demand is higher, at some point of time, the demand is less, and we struggle how to actually sort of even it out, or in a way we suppress the demand. What integration of the mini grids with the main grid can do is that to supply powers whenever there is a deficit, whenever there is a peak demand. And from that point of view, I think the mini grids and micro grids will have great future. What I can see is that even if that universal coverage has been achieved, but even then the growth of the mini grids is continuing. I'm very glad that OMC Power and even other organizations in UP and all over India, they have actually progressed, and now the number of mini grids, as I think about 2,000 in the country, and in UP also it is quite a good number. So the test of pudding is in eating. I'm happy that the sector has survived, it has thrived, but I would definitely say that what is required and what I think is lacking is to how to integrate it with the main grid, so that the supply is provided not only in the unserviced country, in fact, in the whole of African region, sub-Saharan Africa, where there is not much of grids. The mini grids and the micro grids have a great future. But as and when, because when the mini grids were coming, one threat was that what will happen when the main grid will come. So therefore, integration with the main grid with a tariff which is decided, then only feed-in tariff has to be decided. For some methodology will have to be worked out on that. And once we do that, the growth of the sector will definitely take place, and it will be a win-win situation for both the main grid suppliers, which of course is fossil fuel based, and this is the clean energy. The future is with the clean energy, and I wish on this juncture, I'm very happy to see the In fact, I was going through all the progress that has taken place in this sector, and I believe and feel that we have a very bright future ahead. When the universalization of the electricity access was being taken, I remember for some time the government, the power ministry has moved away from the mini grids. But eventually, because of the strength of the sector, it will survive, it will go ahead. The one work that has to be done by the people as to how to integrate. And in integrating, there are not only the problems of feed-in tariff, there are also technological issues, which how to balance the, as they say that so much of RE, there could be an imbalance, there is be in the frequency, etc., etc. I'm not a technical person, but those things will have to be tackled, and for that, R&D work should be done. And I also suggest that organizations like ISA, ISA did a report I was seeing on the Google in 2019 on the mini grid, microgrid, and described it as a success story, which was so gratifying for me. So therefore, the technological input, that also some funding will have to go to that. Strengthening is required. And once we settled all these issues, in which both the power ministry and the RE ministry, both will have to come together. And if they come together, we definitely have create a win-win situation for both the sectors. And that is the future for all the countries, the least developed countries, the island countries, the entire global South. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Verma sir, and you have covered all the dimensions of mini grid and how it can be replicated, one of the best business models which you have done it there. Many thanks for your the feedback on that. Now let me come to a presentation. So I'm Ramesh Kumar. I'm currently heading this projects and programs group in ISA. Very briefly, I'll wanted to give the perspective of ISA, how we are looking at this as an event. Next. Just to recap, the ISA's, what is ISA? So ISA is in a way, it's a global platform for cooperation among countries to increase the use of solar energy in a very convenient, affordable, equitable, and sustainable manner. This was actually launched in 2015, but last 5 years, this has multiplied its activities. And now 110 countries are part of this alliance across the globe, from Africa, Latin American region, United States and the European countries, and Asian countries, as well as Pacific countries. So 110 countries are signatories to this ISA agreement, and of that 90 countries have been ratified, which is a process to become the full-fledged member. As we all are the two very important goals which we are working, and which is most important across the globe, that is to reach the energy access, and also to the climate change mitigation. So these are the two important goals which will be dealt by ISA. Yeah, next. We have kept an ambition target of we should help the countries to have energy transition of 1,000 gigawatt by 2030, reducing the carbon emission of 1,000 million tons, and 1,000 million people should be having the clean energy solution, and 1,000 billion or 1 trillion investment to be achieved by 2030. These are the very larger goals set by ISA. And we are just facilitating the countries to reach these goals. Yeah, next. Very briefly into how do we work, what are the interventions of ISA? One is that we have 9 programs, which is starting from scaling of solar application for the agricultural use, affordable finance at a cost, which we are working, we have made a lot of progress on that. Scaling mini grids, scaling rooftop, scaling e-mobility, solar park, solar heating and cooling, solar PV battery and waste management, and finally solar for green hydrogen. So these are the 9 programs which we are currently offering to the countries based on the approval of the assembly. What are the 3 strategic priorities which ISA's intervention is given to the countries? The one bucket of our activities are advocacy and analysis, and we come out with the World Solar Technology Report, World Solar Market Report, World Solar Investment Report. This has been very recently launched in our last assembly. Capacity building has been very core to International Solar Alliance. So almost more than 2,700 people have been trained through various various programs, whether it is mini grid, solar park, pumping, all these things we have done it. And the third part is the support to the countries for projects implementation, program and project implementation, which I will subsequently talk in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. As of now, for entire across all programs, we have already crossed 9.5 gigawatt of pipeline of project. Almost trained the people of about 2,700. We are supporting 27 LDC and SEEDS countries to do demonstration project across various applications, whether it is health centers or solar pumping system, cold chain. We are supporting 27 countries which are under implementation now. We are representing in almost all important platforms, including COP here. We are here. We are also having various important summits like World Solar Technology Summit, and we will be having more summits which will be happening in the global level. I also talked about the important reports which will come out, which I already talked about it. Yeah, next. Coming to the solar mini grids, next slide. So 18 countries have shown the expression of interest amounting to almost 786 megawatt, where we are supporting the countries. 2-3 important areas which we give is, one is that we have already shared the best practices with all these countries in terms of e-handbook, which is shared with all the countries. And then bankable, we are trying to see how the bankable projects can be created. So now currently in many countries, as you know, all the countries are different kind of level when we talk about the energy transition or energy requirement. So every country will be requiring a different kind of approach. So now currently we have started with Ethiopia, where the ground assessment work will be started shortly for various mini grids. And similarly, the analytics of many of these countries on ground level assessment of many of the countries are in the pipeline, whether the Botswana, Guinea, Kiribati, Sudan, Venezuela, all these countries are in the process. Yeah, next slide. Before coming to this is my last slide. Why I kept this slide here is because the essence of solar mini grids is how do you structure the mini grids. So conventionally, most of the countries are because of the affordability issues, this is being grant based, but now many have come out of this grant based because which is not sustainable to kind of a market driven. So I think that is the key things which the presentations would be here today, and also we will have a panel discussion on that. So with that, I'll just conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. Moving forward, I would request Mr. Manoj Sinha from the Husk Power to give a presentation on the various business model. So over to you, Mr. Manoj Sinha.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my presentation, right? I'm assuming you are not going to do from your side. Okay, I hope you can see what I'm presenting on the screen. If you can see what I'm presenting on the screen, I can start now. Again, hello everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are dialing in from. I'm Manoj Sinha, co-founder and CEO of Husk Power Systems, and I'm here to speak about solar mini grids or microgrids that we have been doing for the last 15 years. Started in the state of Bihar in India, and we are now present in 2 states in India and multiple countries in sub-Saharan Africa. In terms of what we have really accomplished so far, not a whole lot given 15 years of doing it, but being a pioneer, you have to go through a lot of challenges in the initial days. As Mr. Verma was talking about, it was only in 2016 that mini grid regulation was formally launched in the state of UP. And thanks to the regulators to think ahead of the curve. Because of that, we have been able to scale. We have a portfolio of over 150 mini grids, again, across 2 continents. We design, own, operate, and build mini grids. And we have been able to successfully raise private capital, which is commercial capital, to the tune of now actually more than 50 million. And we are in the we are on our way to closing another $100 million of capital, again, to expand our portfolio by another 10x from 150 mini grids to 1,500 mini grids in the coming years. We have been successful in terms of our business model that we have been using both in India and Nigeria, for example. Interestingly, as a side note, Nigeria adopted what was implemented in the state of UP in 2016, almost verbatim when it comes to mini grid regulation. So India took a lead. Nigeria was a fast adopter of that particular regulation. It has evolved since then. And interestingly, Nigeria is ahead in the curve because they are already integrating mini grid with the national grid. So some of our mini grids are now in the process of getting integrated with the national grid for the portfolio that we have in Nigeria. In the world, we do have, or we at least claim to have, the highest ARPU, average revenue per user, lowest LCOE, and we can generate a pretty decent commercial return on the portfolio. So the way we see the challenges of mini grid as a sector, we classify it into 4 buckets. The challenges have been high cost of electricity, poor reliability and customer service that is often associated with DISCOs or DISCOMs, DISCOs in Nigeria or DISCOMs in India, for example. Demand of energy in the rural area is quite low. And therefore, for anybody to make a mini grid commercially viable, you have to really work on creating and shaping the demand curve. It doesn't happen on its own. And last but not the least, to scale it, one really needs to have a platform to be able to use a lot of technical innovations to scale at a high efficiency. Otherwise, the cost can become overwhelming once you're operating tens of thousands of mini grids. So those are the problem statements that we determined for Husk, but also for the mini grid sector as a whole. And we have been relentlessly solving these challenges across all these 4 factors. And again, like I was saying, we claim to be the lowest LCOE provider in the sector. Again, Africa plus Asia combined. Our uptime has been more than 98%. One of the key factors we are able to compete with the national grid in India, for example, is our response time to solving a customer issue is less than 2 hours. We have been averaging 92 minutes of resolution time if and when a customer complaint is registered on our system. And that's a pretty huge deal when you're actually serving a lot of small businesses. India, as well as any other country, runs its economy or GDP on the shoulders of millions of MSMEs. And that's where we make or create a lot of difference in the Indian market. For Africa market, it is both households and MSMEs and other commercial entities. What we have done for analysis part is, and this is something that probably a lot of you already know, and this is for both markets, India plus or Asia and Africa. Solar lanterns was used for providing tier 1 kind of energy only for lighting. But if you look at LCOE, it's very, very high. Then solar home system has been proliferating quite a bit. That is also substantially high. If you eliminate the subsidies that are often given for transmission line extension and transmission line inefficiencies that occurs when you go to the last mile, again, as Mr. Verma was talking about, the cost LCOE becomes quite high. Yes, customers get lower tariff from the national grid, but that's because it is highly subsidized. So in our opinion, MiniGrid offers the best combination of low LCOE and high quality. There is no DISCOM in the world that I know that can fix a reported problem on an average at 90 minutes or less. That's what we aspire to do, right? Especially in the rural areas. So what we have, as per the World Bank report, there are 200,000 plus minigrids needed to be rolled out around the world by 2030 to get access or to get decent access to, energy access to all the people around the world in a clean and renewable fashion, right? Not by injecting coal or fossil fuel in the ecosystem. We are already suffering from climate change by the way of flooding, cyclones, and so on and so forth. So in our opinion, what we have, when we built a roadmap for the industry as a pioneer so that multiple companies can succeed and scale and deliver the target, which is 200,000 minigrids by 2030. In our opinion, we need about 10, at least 10 companies, of course, more is better, to scale at 10 times faster than we are actually collectively scaling as of today. So we have 3 or 4 companies representing in today's panel. We need many more of us, and we need to do it much faster than what we have done in the past few years. So what we did was we took the World Bank report and really used the KPIs and the metrics that we think are important for the whole sector to embrace and drive these metrics to be able to create a portfolio of thousands of minigrids and be able to generate a decent return on assets. So one is, of course, viable business model, and the return expectation in infrastructure segment, which we are as a minigrid company or minigrid companies, we need to deliver 8 to 12% return on investment for any commercial money to flow in. We are talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that is needed to build these 200,000 minigrids, and therefore we should be able to attract major pension capital providers and things of that nature. And of course, the World Bank and other development finance institutions comes to play, but to deploy hundreds of billions of dollars, we need to open up private capital. And one of the factors we talked about is LCOE, of course. As per the World Bank, 2030 projected LCOE is about 20 US cents per kilowatt hour. We think the industry should do much better than that and be at least at 17 cents. Again, this is combination of Asia and Africa on a per kilowatt hour basis to be able to do a decent expansion at a lower cost so that the electricity is affordable to the end customers. Quality, of course, we care about 24/7, 3-phase, something that can be integrated with the main grid. Uptime is something that we have taken a slightly different approach. The World Bank has an uptime requirement of 99% projected. We typically don't provide life critical electricity in many cases. And therefore, to move from 95% to 97% is one thing. To move from 95% to 99.99% is much more expensive. And therefore, in our opinion, if you are serving like really non-life critical clients or customer base, that's one of the ways to optimize your cost or serve enough and still be cost effective. Demand, one of the factors that we think should be measured is ARPU, average revenue per user, and CUF, or load factor or capacity utilization factor. Again, as per the World Bank 2030 projected utilization is 45% to have a successful mini-grid sector. We think it should be much higher. It should be 65 to 70% capacity utilization if we are looking to make a return on asset to the tune of 12% or higher. Scale rate of deployment is pretty slow, and we have been able to scale quite fast over the last 2 years, but it is still not sufficient. If you're operating in multiple countries, each mini-grid company should be able to do 1,800 mini-grids per year by 2030. Of course, you cannot do in one country or one geography, but your throughput can add to 1,800 mini-grids per year. This is the path, from our opinion, that will help meet the 200,000 mini-grid target that the World Bank has stated. And we have taken a more aggressive approach to defining this roadmap and also defining the KPIs that we all, as players in this sector, should embrace and drive towards. So that's what we bring to the table. This is something that we were happy to open Husk Power Systems IP and secret sauces that we have developed so that the sectors and the whole sector can benefit. What took Husk Power Systems 15 years to do, other new credible players should not take 15 years to do it. Hope they can do it in 2, 3, 4 years. That's our contribution to the sector. When you look at markets, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, we classify that market into 3 buckets. One is concessionary markets. I think the presentation before me talked about it. So there are countries that will need a perpetual grant because GDP per capita is quite low, density of population is not high enough, and therefore there's always need for subsidy for that market to be viable. Then there are bridge markets. Maybe Nigeria is a bridge market, for example. There is a need for a performance-based grant and such kind of instrument so that there is 3 to 5 years for players like us to become or to have built enough portfolio size to be then able to service the market in a commercially viable way in the open market, actually like the way we do it in India. The learnings that we have had in India, which Mr. Verma referred to, when you compete in open market, it is one of the most difficult thing to do and survive. Once you have survived in this kind of competitive landscape, things become easier in other parts of the world to compete. That's our experience. Then the commercially viable market, and that would be India and other Southeast Asian countries, where capacity utilization of greater than 50%, ARPU of greater than $10 per customer is not difficult to achieve at all. Regulation has already been covered, so I will not go into that, but regulation that happened in UP in 2016 was pivotal moment for this sector. It again, we started in India in 2008. It took 8 years to get to a policy. I hope other countries don't take 8 or 10 years to do this. Mini-grid should be a part of national electrification plan in all emerging economies, whether it is sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia. That's the only way, in our opinion, to reach a commercially viable net zero way to electrify everybody who is not electrified and to provide 24/7 power to people who are partially electrified or who get unreliable access to electricity. Just a data point for Nigeria, when we enter a village, there are about 300 to 400 diesel generators operating in a village. When we get in with our solar microgrid or mini grid, we are able to eliminate 70 to 80% of that diesel genset uses within the first 6 months. That's the impact we can have on both people and climate. And therefore, mini-grid has to be a part of national electrification plan for all emerging economies. So that's all from my side. That's what we want to contribute to the sector. We have learned a lot over the last 15 years. We hope you read the roadmap that we have built. We are happy to take comments, feedback, and evolve it so that we all benefit together and we all together can reach 200,000 mini-grids before 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for giving a detailed presentation on the model followed by Husqvarna. Now I will come to Mr. Sugata Mukherjee. He is from the Tata Power, head of mini grids business. He has been involved in many of the mini grids development happening in India and also they are into the African countries. I'm sure the business models which he is going to present would give a lot of interest for the African countries as well as the Latin American countries. So over to you, Mr. Sugata Mukherjee.
Thank you, sir. And it's really a privilege for me. I'm heading the operation of Tata Power Renewable Microgrid Initiatives and to present in this August gathering. And I'll just share this presentation. I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So,
yes, very much visible.
Thank you, sir. Tata Power is India's largest private integrated power utility, which is catering to generation, transmission, distribution, renewable in all sectors. In our rural microgrid business, this business is actually based on three pillars: decentralization, that's the distributed generation and supply of electricity; decarbonization through renewable energy sources; and digitalization, not only in the process and technology automation, but even in the customer services as well. So compared to Husk or OMC, we have started this business recently in November 2019. This new organization, TP Renewable Microgrid Limited, has been formed. And we have a very ambitious target of setting up 10,000 mini grids, which is perhaps the world's largest mini grid program over next 6 to 7 years. Our objective is to provide clean, affordable, reliable electricity to the and with the 24/7 services to the customers. But more importantly, it is also to drive economic growth through small enterprises and agriculture, and to provide the value-added services like promoting the affordable energy efficient appliances. So what we believe in this journey is that microgrid is not only the setting up the mini grid for the supply of reliable electricity, but also to create a complete ecosystem in which the electricity can be most beneficial for the users. This is what the mini grid looks like in Tata Power area. And the major components of the mini grids are the solar panels, 30 kilowatt of size as on date. It is the standard size that we are providing, along with the battery and inverter system. Another overhead distribution network of 2 to 2.5 kilometer, and with this, we have a pole-mounted smart meters, which caters to our customers. As a backup, when the solar generation will not be available in the rainy day or even the foggy atmosphere, we have kept as on date a DG set, which is going to be replaced this year with a biogas plant, and a biomethane plant with a hub and spoke model is under testing right now in our area. So while the major drivers for the mini grid is the energy access and clean energy, the value proposition for the customers are primarily the reliable electricity, quality of supply, because in the rural area, many places, the quality of supply about the voltage and frequency is not available. Along with that, with our smart meter, we create the affordable package for the economically backward class of population, because here we can provide only electricity up to the extent that is required by the customer and through the time of day supply. Also, we provide the value-added services by offering energy efficient appliances. Apart from that, we also provide forward linkage and backward linkage for the micro enterprises for the value chain creation of our the customers. As on date, approximately 200 mini grids have been installed, 191 to be precise, and it is serving more than 18,000 happy customers in the rural India. It is reducing the CO2 emissions by 8,100 tons per annum, and approximately 300,000 of liters of diesel consumption is also mitigated. But also another important aspect to be noticed here is that there are irrigation pumps which are creating the village level entrepreneurs who are also earning a substantial amount in the village area by providing water as a service to other farmers. So with our 66 irrigation pumps, we are servicing more than 300 farmers in the rural area. While we will be implementing 10,000 mini grids, obviously that major objective is to provide affordable electricity to 25 million of population. But at the same time, we will be also creating 25,000 new entrepreneurs in the agri businesses, 15,000 entrepreneurs in the water and irrigation, like clean drinking water provision and the irrigation water as a services, and green job entrepreneurs will be supporting the mini grid operation. Ultimately, this will result in 1 million ton of CO2 emission and 57 million liter of diesel usage prevention also. In our journey of last 1.5 years, we have seen that there are many technology innovation that is required for the mini grid. One of the important aspect is about the smart meter, as I was mentioning. It has to be a low cost, and it also has to be a load limiting facility along with the prepayment facility and the time of day supply. So our smart meters, which can be remotely monitored and controlled, this provides all these services to the customers, and that is the major benefit for the end customers. Remote monitoring and control of the mini grids and also a modular plug and play mini grid helps us in setting up different capacity of mini grid in different area. And we are presently implementing different technology of the battery like vanadium flow battery and other technologies which can be future for the mini grid operation. Our mini grid operation is always focused upon creating the local employability and engagement at the time of the implementation, installation, as well as operation maintenance. All the persons are today approximately 160 such local youths have been engaged by Tata Power for the operation maintenance of the plant. In creation of the circular economy, I mentioned about the empowering the farmers, water as a service. Along with that, for the micro and small medium enterprise, as my colleague Mr. Sinha has also mentioned, for them, reliable electricity is the key for their success of the business. We focus upon creation of that, and also about how to convert from the diesel generator operated enterprises to the microgrid operated. We all are focusing upon the women empowerment, and presently more than 1,800 number of women entrepreneurs are enjoying the mini grid supply. We have partnered with Usha Silai School, that is the leading sewing machine manufacturing agency in India. And with their partnership, we have created the training school for the women, as well as the empowering them for the employability. Government of India's initiative for creating the self-reliant India, we are now focusing upon the village level entrepreneur creation. And particularly this has been important after the COVID-19, when the reverse migration has occurred from the cities to the villages. More than 50 such new VLEs have been created in last 1.5 years, who are running their own business like flour mill and oil expeller supplied by the microgrid supply, and they are happily now staying in their home village. When I have understood this importance of the creation of the ecosystem, to further scaling it up, we are partnering with various stakeholders like Small Industry Development Bank of India, which is a Government of India organization. we have now partnered with them for creation of 1,000 such micro enterprises who will be financially supported by SIDBI, by their partners, as well as they will get the green energy from the microgrid. Women empowerment, we have talked about that different businesses they are having, as well as the farmers who are getting the electricity from the microgrid. Incidentally, we have also seen in certain parts, although electricity grid has reached every part of our country, but still there are certain parts where the economically backward section of the society have still not got the electricity. Our team has presently provided electricity to this kind of villages, this kind of houses as well. And this is after 25 years of darkness. It is quite a pleasure for us to see their connection to happiness in this. This type of initiative has also now encouraged us to partner with the state government and UP's first smart green digital village, which is in the Rewana village in Lakhimpur district. These have been powered by the Tata Power microgrid, and we have implemented all our initiatives there, along with the support of the government initiatives for creating a better economic condition for that village. These have been further recognized in different public communications. This ultimately, this entire creation of the ecosystem and providing clean, cheap, and abundant electricity is in line with the Tata Group founders' dream for economic progress of the country. Our contribution is towards that also. Now, I'll take just one more minute to share with you about the report from the leading media from India about the initiatives where women are empowered through initiative between Tata Power and Usha.
India has immense potential for solar energy. It is estimated that India's land area receives approximately 5,000 trillion kilowatt-hour of solar energy every year, with most areas receiving 4 to 7 kilowatt-hour per square meter per day. Millions of people in India's villages, most significantly rural women and young girls, have benefited from solar energy. It has powered many day-to-day activities from lighting and cooking to farming and other energy requirements. One such energy requirement is in order to keep electric sewing machines going. And that is exactly what is happening in the village of Dholi in Muzaffarpur, Bihar, where the Usha Silai School centers for training and production are now powered by solar energy. This is thanks to a partnership between TP Renewable Microgrid, a 100% subsidiary of Tata Power, and Usha Silai School. The use of solar power at the village level through the Silai schools and production centers not only raises awareness of these environmental friendly alternative sources of energy, but also significantly reduces costs for the women running the production centers.
That's all from my side. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Hello. Yeah, many thanks, Mr. Mukherjee, for giving a detailed presentation. I think you have a very large video, of course, that can be shared in subsequently as well, which will be very useful to the audience. Yeah. So with that, we are finishing the presentations as of now. and we will be having a panel discussion now. For the panel discussion, before handing over to the moderator will be Mr. Matt Jordan. He's available here. He's physically here. Before that, I would like to introduce the panel to him so that he can take it further on that. Yeah, of course, Mr. Deepak Verma, he is already there. He has already talked here. Now I will also welcome Mr. Rohit Chandra. He is the founder and CEO of OMC Power, and they have been very successfully doing so many mini grids in the commercial basis, and it's a eye opener for many people in the success of these projects. From the Tata Power, Mr. Mukherjee has given the presentation, but Mr. Manoj Gupta is joining for the panel discussion. Mr. Samit Mitra, head of programs in Smart Power India. They have been giving a lot of solutions for the effective implementation of rooftop, the mini grid project. And finally, Mr. Dennis, he is here. He is from GAP, and he has a vast experience with mini grids. So this is the panel where we have now. I will now hand over the mic to Mr. Matt for further taking the proceedings for the panel discussion. Over to Matt, yeah.
Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind leaving that there, that'd be helpful. Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Very grateful to be here with you at this incredibly important gathering of leaders and practitioners focused on solving climate change and energy access. My name is Matt Jordan. I am with RMI, an international NGO focused on the clean energy transition. We're commonly known as the Rocky Mountain Institute. You may have heard us referred to as the Rocky Mountain Institute. I work within our Global South portfolio of programs, which focuses on the clean energy transition around the world, but particularly in emerging economies. And I am a principal in charge of, along with some other principals, a program called the Energy Transition Academy, which is a diverse and dynamic portfolio of clean energy workforce skills development, community engagement, and leadership acceleration efforts. And it's something that we're very, very excited about, and something that's highly relevant to the mini grid space. An important thing to understand about the Energy Transition Academy and much of RMI's work is that our model is based on deep partnership, and a very important partnership to us currently is the Africa Mini Grids program, which we are co-leading with UNDP, the African Development Bank, and many others through a combination of regional programs as well as national programs. We are working through the Africa Mini Grids program to drive scaled commercial investment in mini grids throughout the continent. And we do this through de-risking activities, policy activities, capacity development activities, and much more. As Mr. Manoj spoke to earlier, the need for scale in the mini grid sector is incredibly important. I think Manoj pointed out that we have 10% of the 200,000 renewable mini grids that we need in order to reach global goals this decade. We are not there yet, and we need to do much, much more work. So this issue of scale is massive in this sector. And so I really want to focus our dialogue today, our focus today on this question of scale. And so I'm going to go through sort of each panelist and give just a couple of minutes to reflect on some of the issues related to barriers to scale, opportunities for scale, and how internationally, regionally, and collaboratively we can work together to scale meaningful solutions. So I'll turn, I think, first to Manoj. Manoj, I mean, you spoke very eloquently on this topic, but from what you've seen in the marketplace, what are one or two of the biggest barriers to scale that you've seen in the renewable mini grids market?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone over here. So the biggest thing, I think technology brings the scale in place. So there's no dearth of problem over there. But for us, what we see, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay, great. So according to us, while technology is there, and what we have seen, many of the mini-grid players have been deploying that in terms of scaling up. Today, what we feel that there are two factors which really impacts the scale part of it. While technology gets deployed, the skill sets which are required to operate that, and especially from the rural ecospheres, I think that's one space where it's still left out. Skill development program, capacity development program are the one which will be needed to scale it up. Number two, what we have seen in the rural market today, usage of inefficient energy resources are being deployed in excess manner. Moving towards efficient systems like solars are being getting deployed, but energy efficient motors, pumps, heating systems are still far away. And we need to have potential or focus to develop those areas. And the third thing from a government side, if some economic support for the rural entrepreneur can be extended, that will be a great thing to develop. And that's all. I think these three things can take care of the entire ecosystem development.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll put the same question to Mr. Chandra. What are some of the barriers to scale that you're seeing in the renewables mini-grid market?
Hi, thank you so much. And a big thank you to ISA and Mr. Verma for his opening remarks in this session today. Pleasure to see you after many years, sir. And yeah, this topic of scale has been, I think, a very important topic. And our view on this is that, first of all, the big barrier to scale is a viable and bankable business model. So while we speak of mini grids, but the business models that we are practicing are probably slightly different from each other. We do what we call the ABC business model, where we are heavily dependent on an anchor client, which is in our case a telecom tower. And what we've seen in our experience that when you look at market-driven models where you need to go and access capital markets for equity, or you need to get debt financing, then you're often confronted with the question that is the business model really working, and which in our case really means that each unit that we deploy must be profitable, must give returns, reasonable returns. If it's debt, you must have the ability to pay back the debt, and if it's equity, you must have reasonable returns for investors who come as equity investors. We've been able to attract two of the finest Japanese companies in this space. So we work with Mitsui since the last almost 6 years now, and we also now work since 2022 with Japan's leading energy utility called Chubu Electric. So we believe that the anchor-based business model that we have brought in gives a predictable cash flow and ensures that there is a certain amount of plant utilization from day one. And of course, the B and C segments of the market, which are small and medium enterprises and rural households, provide an infinite upside potential. But in many cases, investors and debt providers are a little wary of that, and they need to see it to believe it. We've been in the space for 10 years, and we believe that we are one of the largest scaled up company. We currently run about a portfolio which generates about 30 megawatt hours of renewable energy. We have a storage capacity of about 26 megawatt hours, a grid of 500 kilometers, and we serve 25,000 off-takers and service about 100,000 beneficiaries on our grids across. We run about 280 plants in Uttar Pradesh, and we are scaling it to 1,000 in the short to medium term and to 5,000 in the long term. So I think the most important thing is a bankable model where you can actually demonstrate that it's bankable, and the company is able to get to an EBITDA positive result, in black and white, and not sometimes in the future. And then there is this question, which I think Mr. Verma very adequately answered, about a stable regulatory framework, which Uttar Pradesh definitely provides for now, and then access to equity and debt markets, which will help in the expansion. So that's my initial comment.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I'll turn the same question to Mr. Verma. From the policymaker perspective, and the government perspective, what are some of the barriers that you're seeing and observing sort of throughout the marketplace? And I'll remind everybody, if we can, let's try to keep our answers to 2 minutes or so we have plenty of time for everybody. Mr. Verma, you're still on mute. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. In fact, the 2 points have already been elaborated by Mr. Manoj and Rohit. What I would like to say is that from, again, as you said, policy perspective, the policy in this respect should have 2 components very essentially. One, the clarity, and the 2, supportive. It should have a clarity and it should have a supportiveness. We should not take up mini grids only as a CSR activity. Many people think that just take a CSR. If you want to make it viable and you want to make it sustainable, it has to be a policy which is based on the sound financial management and sound economics. The requirement for the governments to do this, how much I heard recently a problem here in UP that one of the power grid one of the main grid companies, superintendent engineer, is not allowing a non-conventional mini grid to come up, saying that where is your license? So the fact that it is deregulated or it has been given that blanket approval, these facts are not clear. These facts are not known to people, and must be the situation in many other states. So the government's policy, because just making announcements that we want to promote RE, also by making that CSR oriented kind of a contributions, will not help if you want to make it a long-term sustainable solution. So in my opinion, that is the most important thing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Very insightful. I'll put the same question to Dennis, who's here with us in person. What are some of the biggest barriers to scale that you're seeing from the sort of like funder and philanthropic community perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think we already realize the capacity of mini grids, or the quantum we need of mini grids. And what we see as a barrier to scale is the capacity for those mini grids to be built. So the first layer of that capacity is the government side, who are supposed to facilitate and create an environment that allows developers to actualize their mini grids. So there isn't enough capacity, both in terms of number of people and the skills that are required to really license and support hundreds of mini grids within a country within a few months. So we are still doing 1 or 2 or 3 mini grids within a month, and that is still a huge bottleneck at the government level. So that is one of the barriers that we see. On the other side, which is on the supply side, the people and the developers who are supposed to bring these mini grids to life still are not enough for the continent. We need more than 200,000 mini grids, and we're only working with a few developers. So we already are having a challenge that will come to us in future. I think as an organization, what we are looking at is how we can develop the right capacity in the right numbers to so that when the opportunity and the financing comes, there are people who can take in the financing and develop these mini grids. So that is one of the main barriers that we see, which is the capacity. The second one, which has been touched on, I think, is the partnerships angle. So mini grid developers currently are being left to do a lot of the heavy lifting end to end, which is not sustainable at all. So as we have seen throughout the last 10 years, this approach has not worked to scale the mini grid sector as we had hoped. We think that partnerships are one of the solutions, or is one of the solutions to this. So we get mini grid developers doing the energy development and taking the project through the entire development cycle, but we need more partnerships to be built around the mini grid sector. So when we talk about a business model that brings in productive use, we need more partnerships to be built. We need people who are very good at this agro-processing, at mining, at all these productive uses that we are mentioning to come in and collaborate with the mini grid developers so that each one is bringing the best skill to the table. And through this, I think the confidence that we are building to the investor community and to the general community that this is a solution for electrification will be more sustainable in the next few years, where we hope to accelerate electricity access.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dennis. And finally, our final panelist here would like to hear from Mr. Samit Mitra on this question. What are some of the largest and, I guess, stickiest barriers to scale that you've seen through your work at Smart Power India?
Hi, everyone. See, in India, I think Mr. Verma shared a data that, there are, at this point in time, 3,200 odd mini grids which are there. And out of which 700 are, privately owned and operated. And all of them, are operating to the full tilt. They are at a unit level, they are, the margins are positive and they are growing year on year. One thing which, one should ask is that why is that, such a large scale of private mini grids are doing so well in India, whereas, in other places, people are kind of, struggling to even put up the first 5, first 10. In order to have such a program, I mean, India has been blessed that, we had visionaries like Mr. Verma, who took the responsibility of coming up with the first, mini grid policy. And we had crazy people like Rohit and Manoj, who kind of, put their skin in the game to kind of get into this sector, which had no future at that point in time. But one thing which I would say as a small barrier is the lack of focus of the government at this point in time. See, the thing is that if we talk of money coming into this, I mean, there has been 140 odd million, which has been put in by private sector. But if we look at the DFI or the multilaterals to invest in this sector, they usually tend to align with the priority programs of the government. And until and unless the government of the day take up mini grid as one of their priorities. See, mini grid is not a competitor to the main grid at all. It complements it very well. And one should understand to achieve a universal 24/7 kind of energy situation, you need both to coexist. So once the government kind of picks this up as a priority sector, we will find a lot of multilaterals like a World Bank, ADBs, and players like that to enter this space and bring in cheap capital, which can actually accelerate the growth of this sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very, very helpful. So in the interest of time, I was planning on asking 2 more questions and sort of going through the panel on each one, but I think I'm going to blend those questions and give our panelists an opportunity to sort of, I guess, blend their answers to those questions so that we can get to Q&A and make good use of our expert panel. So the first question is, in light of these barriers to scale that we've seen, that are quite endemic sort of throughout the mini grid market, what are some of the most exciting business models or policy or technological innovations that you've seen to address these barriers, and what support can international bodies, regional bodies, local bodies, like governments, like multilaterals, like NGOs and others play to spin up and scale out these innovations that can drive at barriers to scale. And I think I'll go in reverse order on this. So let's start with Mr. Mitra. Mr. Mitra, if you'd care to sort of respond to that blended question.
Yeah, I will reiterate what Rohit said, that it's the most important thing to kind of overcome these barriers is to have a very, very flexible, but at the same time, a robust business model. One can't start this program and say that this is it. This is the model which I am going to pursue for the next so many years. You have to be flexible. You have to evolve your model with time. And all of this, I mean, between the three of them, OMC, Husk, and TPRMG, out of the 700, 600 plus mini grids are managed by them, and they have evolved their business model over time, and that's the only reason why they have grown successfully. In terms of, I won't use the word support from government or multilateral. See, the thing is that if you look at the ROI of a mini grid in terms of impact, I mean, you won't find such impact returns from any other renewable project. So, they should, each of them, the multilaterals, the DFIs, the government should look at a mini grid project to collaborate, to kind of work together with the developers, and not, look at that, we need to provide support or we have to provide support. It's a win-win for all. If you look at the carbon emission reduction, if you look at jobs, if you look at even access, though India has 100% of the villages electrified, it's humongous. And we have been reporting it through an independent agency for the last 7-8 years now, and we have not seen any other sector to give such a return on the small investment which is required. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very helpful. I'll hand it back to Dennis. Dennis, is your microphone working?
Yeah, right.
Okay, very good.
Does it?
I can't.
All right, thank you very much. I think for us, again, I'll build on my point on the partnership. So one of the most interesting models that we've been trying is how do we make sure that the mini-grid developers receive support from the much more experienced utilities for them to understand the lessons to learn from utilities and how they can avoid those pitfalls and create models that are more sustainable than what we see at the utilities point. So this is something that we have tried in Uganda, a project called Utilities 2.0, where the utility and the mini-grid developer are working hand in hand to both leverage on their strengths and try and develop a electrification model that can be sustainable and can be affordable for the communities. So utilities coming in with their strength of managing infrastructure, building infrastructure, purchasing equipment at a very low cost because of bulk procurement. And the developer is coming in with their strength of good customer management, demand stimulation, and all-around ability to develop new business models around electrification. So when these two are brought in together, what we are getting is a blend of affordable capital, systems, being able to leverage on systems that are already existing on the payment backend and all these things. And we're also getting a customer-centric approach to electrification, which means the average consumption per user is really, really high compared to the way utilities would see it after a very short time. For us, we see that these sort of engagements, where again, we are creating an environment for mini-grid developers that they don't need to really do the heavy lift, and the support partners like ourselves who are funders or transactional advice or technical advice providers don't really need to do a heavy lift on each and every piece of infrastructure that is being built, but we are trying to develop sectoral products that are built to scale and are fit for purpose. So I think for us, that is a very interesting model, and we hope to see more of this, as I mentioned, where these partnerships are more deliberate on trying to move the market towards everything that we want to achieve on the cost, on reliability, and on quality of service, so that we are improving jobs and livelihoods, as is really the main purpose of providing energy to communities in rural areas.
Thank you again, Dennis. I'll hand this question over to Mr. Verma. Mr. Verma, what are some of the most interesting policy or business model innovations that you've seen, and what support is needed nationally and internationally to scale those innovations up?
You see, in my opinion, the models evolve as the time goes by, depending on the situations. At one time, the ABC model was the best, but because there was a need for economic stability, and therefore there was a need for an anchor. Now probably the situation has come, and that is why several players have come out with different models, which is sustainable, can stand on its own feet. So therefore, the models would evolve, they are evolving. So I would say that there is a combination of different models or a bouquet of models which could be adopted for different areas and different situations. But I would like to definitely talk about a little bit about what Tata is doing, because in this sector, you need some big players to come forward and provide the kind of support, apart from the support from the government, support which has to be provided. Like just now in the presentation, it was talked of the partnership with the different organizations, which could spur some industrial activity into the sector, into that catchment area, that village. Because people will see value only after they see, because if they have to buy the power at a higher price, they would go for it only if there is some value addition for them. If it is spurring some industrial activity, they would go for that. So from that point of view, Tata's partnership model is definitely a good model to work with. But as a word of caution, I would, as I already said this, that please don't do it as a CSR activity. Do internalize it and then see how this can be actually furthered and can be upscaled. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Verma. And I see Mr. Gupta very excitedly nodding his head as Tata Power was discussed. And so if you wouldn't mind weighing in on the question as well, what are some of the most exciting innovations you've seen, and what support is needed globally to scale those innovations up?
Yeah, so very rightly said. I think business models are going to evolve, but hybrid model is going to probably stay, and it will be geography specific and the society specific. But one thing what we have done in Tata Power when we've been doing this business is adopting a 3C approach. And when I say 3C approach, it is co-create, collaborate, and coordinate with the local community for which we are going to serve. And I think that is a big success factors in our business when we are going forward. And while these three are worked in tandem, it is important that the focus of all the stakeholders are on ecosystem development. Because all alone Tata Power cannot do it, or US Power, or any of the SPs can do it. But it has to be development the entire ecosystem, which includes technology, social, financials, and all the players come together to make this happen. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And finally, Mr. Chandra, if you wouldn't mind weighing in as well.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, various variants of the model are evolving. You need to be nimble-footed. We started off with what we call the ABC model, and like Mr. Verma said, we already practice 3 different variants of it. We have something called the BC model, where we do not use diesel as a backup and only serve small and medium enterprises and households. We have something which is called the A model, in which we only serve telecom. We have something which we call the EABC model, which is more closer to becoming a rural utility, where in addition to power, we also offer layered services. I think Tata Power talked about it a little bit, services which are dependent on availability of reliable energy access. So there are different models, and of course, we ourselves need to be completely free of fossil fuel. And we currently run 20% of our sites without any fossil fuel, and plan to bring it to 100% in the next 3 years. So interesting times and lots of innovation happening. This provides a kind of inclusive model for the village, where, a B customer, where the anchor can be served by the same company, and so can be the poorest person in the village. So it's an opportunity to develop our villages in a more sustained manner compared to how cities got developed over time. So exciting times. I stop here.
Very, very good. I want to thank all of our distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for being here with us in person and virtually at COP27. I wouldn't be doing my job as moderator if I didn't encourage at least one audience question, but if we can keep it quick, that would be great. Does anybody have any questions before I hand the microphone over to Mr. Kumar? All right, well, seeing none, thank you again, panelists, and I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Matt, for wonderfully handling this session, moderation of this panel discussion. It has been very, very exciting, very interesting, and the wide range of issues and the aspects which we covered here, which is very, very useful for scaling up of mini grids, is very, very, it has been very interesting. So I think the most important point for concluding this session, what I would like to summarize some of the points which we discussed. And the most important point probably is that it gives a lot of confidence and the surety of success for scaling these mini grids across the world and wherever the energy access is an issue. I think these models will definitely help the countries to scale up. So that's the most important point I could get from major discussions which we had now. I think the key issue is to create the business model, and very interesting models have been discussed here. I'm sure that these models can be taken up in many of the countries where the energy access is an issue. And I think there's a room for all kind of business model depending on the ground situations. And I'm sure all these models will be in one or other way will be replicated in these countries where so much of such mini grids are to be developed. Some of the other points which I could see from the discussion, the integrating with the agriculture, because the backbone of most of the rural areas is agriculture. So the integrating with the agriculture is very key whenever we are planning a mini grid. So that is one of the important points I could see. And secondly, it has to basically support the income generation scheme so that that scales up the economic activities in the area and gives a lot of confidence for the youth to come forward and stay in the villages for their livelihood. So the engaging local people is very important. One of the interesting model, APC model, which I can see is to, one is that anchor load is a very important point, which can work as a backbone. So in a way, that will, I would say, cross-subsidizing in that sense that the more affordable people can pay higher, and that can be effectively used for meeting maybe the domestic load and all. So that is an important thing. And maybe the quality of service is not only the energy access, the quality, maybe at the right time you are getting the power, for the right purpose you are getting the power. So that is one key area there. Use of technology, it has come a very long way in this mini grids, whether it is prepaid metering or remote monitoring or attending all these the technical issues in this mini grids. I think that's a very important aspect. Energy efficiency has to go hand in hand with the mini grid. So this is one important point. And very interesting point, which is which Tata Power, I'm happy that you have brought out the women empowerment, because they are again the backbone of the rural area. So it has to support the empowerment of women. So these are the very important points. I think finally, it's the government regulations and enabling mechanisms plays a very, very important role. For that, I would also thank Mr. Verma to give that perspective, which can be in fact utilized for many of the countries. These are the very important points which I could conclude here. Many, many thanks for the panel and the presenters for attending, for joining this program. And with that, I would like to conclude this session. Many thanks.